Good evening and welcome to the Dollar Dogs and Beer podcast. I'm your host, Andrew, and it's a light crowd tonight. It's just me and Joe tonight. Jason's off the Phillies game with some gorgeous seats and sending us some fantastic looking pictures in the group chat. And Ron had a prior engagement tonight, so just me and Joe tonight. This should be fun. How you doing, dude?
Should be fun.
It wasn't a great week for the Braves last week, so I'm going to be a little ranty. So it's going to be a good night.
Yeah, and I mean, I was gonna try to get you to Phantom IL Ron anyway, so he had something else come up, so it didn't matter.
All right, so Joe, what are you drinking tonight?
I'm trying to stay a little level-headed with the way that the Cubs season has gone so far, and with the injury news today. So I'm just staying level and drinking Diet Mountain Dew on its own tonight.
Keeping it straight.
Hoping Seiya is back quickly and all that, but more on that later. So
yeah, definitely. And for me tonight, like I said, I'm a little upset. Atlanta, I don't care about losing a series to the Mets. I hate getting fucking blown out by the Mets, though. That just kind of pissed me off a lot. So I'm a little angry. I'm drinking Angry Orchard tonight.
It's a good choice, I think.
Used
to be one of my favorites.
It's a great cider. It's crisp. It's a nice flavor. All right, let's roll into it tonight. I don't know if you noticed, Joe, I did update the Facebook profile picture today because it is Jackie Robinson Day. We've got the DDAB with the 42 on top of it to honor Jackie today. I think I'll leave it up for the week because you know what? I feel like it. And we're going to do that. So I think this is the first year we've been lucky enough to broadcast live. I think every other year it's been on a different day. So, today being Jackie Robinson Day, everybody's wearing Jackie's 42 in the Dodger blue on the back of the uniforms. It happens every year on April 15th to commemorate and honor the day Jackie Robinson made his Major League Baseball debut, breaking the color barrier. The tradition of Jackie Robinson Day was started by Bud Selig in 2004, one of the few good decisions he made in his tenure as commissioner. Initially, it was only 13 parks, and then it increased to every park by 2005. In 97, Major League Baseball retired 42 across the board. Some notable players who wore 42. Mariano Rivera is probably the best known, I would think. So the Yankees have actually retired 42 twice. And Ken Griffey Jr. did it for Jackie Robinson Day back in 2007 with special permission from Bud Selig. And then by 2009, every player and coach is wearing 42 on Jackie Robinson Day. And I love seeing it every year, Joe. I love seeing all the players wearing 42. And I really love how they changed it a couple years ago to make it everybody's doing it in Dodger blue. It's just a really special moment on the field.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's nice to see that. This is the first time I think that Patriots Day in Boston has coincided with it too. So they had their City Connects on yesterday. The yellow and blue, and the marathon was today. So it was nice to have sort of all of these things happening at the same time in baseball today.
Yeah, that's great that they all intertwined like that. That's awesome. Jason sent us a picture earlier from their seats up in the 400 level, right behind home plate. When the players are swinging, you can see the 42 on the backs. And I'll let Jason show off pictures next week when he's back on. But they've got great seats this year, and it's cool that he's there and he gets to see it. Anybody who would like to learn more about Jackie, I mean, there's so many books that have been written. I'm going to go a little off target a little bit. I'm going to say, pull up a copy of 42 because Chadwick Boseman did a phenomenal job as Jackie Robinson in that movie. And they really did a great job of not trying to limit the crap that Jackie Robinson had to endure, all the racial slurs and taunts from opponents. They didn't cut it out. They really did a good job of letting history show it as best as we could, how it was back for Jackie. And, if you've never watched it, I highly recommend it anyway. But, today would be a great day for anybody who hasn't seen it. Today is the day to watch it. All right, let's move on to some more. I guess I don't know if you want to call it modern news, but Pepe Mizuhara, Otani's former interpreter, surrendered to authorities Friday and released shortly thereafter on an unsecured $25,000 bond. Which how he found $25,000 when he stole $16 million from Otani and somehow lost all of it gambling? That's a great question. He was also ordered by U.S. Magistrate Judge Maria Odero to undergo gambling addiction treatment related to the sports betting case. He exploited his personal professional relationship with Otani to steal more than $16 million from the two-way player's bank account for years. At times, he was impersonating Otani to bankers so he could cover his bets and debts, which that also might be why Otani didn't notice it. If he was imitating Otani may never have gotten notification that this was happening. A statement from his attorney, Michael Friedman, quote, he wishes to apologize to Mr. Otani, the Dodgers, Major League Baseball, and his family. As noted in court, he is also eager to seek treatment for his gambling. We have no further comment at this time, but Mr. Mizuhara will be providing further comment as the legal process proceeds. So right now, Joe, he has been charged with one count of bank fraud, which can carry a maximum fine of up to $1 million and or 30 years in prison. The other conditions of his bond, he cannot gamble either electronically or in person. He's not allowed to go inside any gambling establishments, associate with any known bookmakers. He is prohibited from contacting any victim or witness in the cases in any form. So, what do you think?
There's a lot of this that just stinks. A lot of this stinks to high heaven. There's a lot of this that doesn't add up. And I mean, yeah, he can't gamble, but he impersonated somebody for years, so it doesn't really matter. He can gamble as somebody else if he wants to. He's already done it. So, I mean, look, at first when it was $4 million, you're like, I don't quite get it, but okay, I guess. Now it's $16 million. There's no way in hell you don't miss it. I'm sorry, there is not. There's no absolute possible way that you miss $16 million in your bank account.
It must be nice to have made enough money playing baseball and made enough off endorsements that you could continue your regularly scheduled life, not realizing that you were 16 million in the hole that you didn't know about. Must be nice.
There's a lot of conveniences to this story that just are very suspicious, if you ask me. Not only the 16 million part, the sizes of his bets. He lost bets of nearly 183 million. Winning bets of 142 million and 40.7 in losses. And conveniently no bets on baseball somehow, which again, I have a hard time believing that happened. You make as many bets as he did to have your gambling debt be almost the entirety of the A's payroll. Somebody's going to notice.
Yeah.
And if you're stealing that money from your pal, somebody had to know something. And I don't think, I still firmly believe this guy's the fall guy for this. Nothing has said, no, they've not come out and said that Shohei Ohtani didn't gamble. And if they had evidence to show that Shohei wasn't involved, they would have. The fact that you're dumping it on this guy and the amount of money that's involved here, there's too much there that makes you go, okay, we're open and done with this already. There's all the bets about Ohtani and Freeman in the order now because Ohtani's free from all this. That they buried it. I think, and you'll find out at some point down the road that he was a part of it in some way. I heard Glasnow did an interview today. I think I shared part of it on the pitching side. But in another part of that, he said something to the effect of, "Oh, we all knew that Ippei was a shady guy," and I'm like, "You all knew him. You only knew him for 2 months. You all knew he was a shady guy. The Dodgers only have known this guy for 3 months. It seems awfully convenient. There's a lot of conveniences there. That's just my take on it. I could be wrong, but that's sort of my take on it."
Yeah, I'm willing to believe, based on what I've heard about Shohei Ohtani's character, that he probably was not involved in the gambling himself. most likely. I have a lot of questions though. The money's not adding up unless he was stealing money from other people too, which he may have been having some debts covered by family as well. I think I might have read that initially, but the money is still not the amounts still aren't adding up.
Right.
And this is, like we pointed out a couple weeks ago, this is a cross-state, cross-jurisdiction issue. The FBI is involved. The FBI is investigating, and it is very likely that more will be uncovered before this is all said and done. I know he's already in on bond and everything, and he's probably already cut a plea deal, I would imagine, to confess and give up the bookie, but we'll see. It's definitely a story we're going to be keeping an eye on throughout the summer and beyond, because I think it's going to be a very long time before we have full resolution, if we ever see full resolution. It may be, I will not be shocked if we get, majority of the pie, but a lot of the crumbs are hidden behind a confidential agreement or something like that.
Yeah, I can't see us hearing much more than what we've already heard. And I do think that if, the one thing that makes you kind of, you want to believe that he's the clean cut guy and he's not involved in any of this. There's the dugout footage that you see sometimes. There's, the amount of money here. The fact that they haven't just come out and said that he didn't do anything, to me, it's kind of like, okay, so we're dumping it on the interpreter, and all of a sudden Pete Rose is like, hey, can I change my story now? Like,
I saw that. That was one of the funniest things I saw on the internet last week.
That's one of the funniest things to come out of this, is that Pete Rose should just blame his interpreter and all would be forgiven.
Well, I mean, he was well versed in smartass. Not everybody's well versed in smartass.
Yeah,
that's a legitimate need for an interpreter. So, all right. So moving on, and speaking of Shohei, he hit his 175th career home run on his first swing Friday evening in an eventual 8-7 loss to the Padres, which was also his first game since Mizuhara was charged with bank fraud, because of course it was. Home run number 175 ties Hideki Matsui for most home runs by a Japanese-born player in Major League Baseball. Pitch came in the first swing of the night against Michael King. So Shohei's clearly chugging along just fine without Mizuhara interpreting for him. So clearly that's not affecting Ohtani one bit. Looking at fantasy baseball in the Dollar Dogs and Beer Fantasy Baseball League, Week 2 is in the books. The results are as followed. My team, Acuna's Boomas, knocked Todd's team, Finding Nemo, down pretty hard, 20-6. It was worse. He caught back up a little bit, so good job, Todd. Joe, not such a great week for you. Happy and Hornsby went down to Tim's team, Ari Jordan, 16-7. And then Schmidt happens, 14-9 over Turner and Chooch. So Jason not starting off so hot after going almost wire to wire last year, if I remember correctly, in the regular season anyway, before Ron decided to suddenly become a world-class fantasy player and beat us down in the playoffs. So Joe, looking at the standings after week 2, I'm leading the way 40-12-4. Ari Jordan is 12 games back, up 2 spots. You are 14 back, down a spot. Schmidt happens. Ronnie is at 18.5 back, down 2 spots. Up 2 spots, tied with Todd at 18.5 back, and Jason is pulling up the caboose at 21 back. So, any thoughts on the fantasy season so far?
Well, I mean, look, the first week's matchup with Jason, I think the length of time of that first week is always kind of an outlier. I obviously had some great offensive numbers that first week or so, and pitching numbers. So I think it ebbs and flows, and some guys have gotten hurt. More guys have gotten hurt now, in the last week or so too. And I think some of that initial production has cooled off, and some of that just wrong place, wrong time, that kind of thing. I feel like pitching wise, I didn't do too well. That was probably one of my weaknesses this week, was pitching. Offensively, I didn't have quite enough numbers on that front either. My star, I guess you could say, would be Shota had another good week. and whatnot, but just not enough. Didn't bring it.
Yeah, and that's going to happen. I mean, fantasy's always going to feature ebbs and flows. Ronnie clearly hopping in from the party he's at. No going wire to wire this year for Jason. Nope. And I know we're all heartbroken, aren't we, Ron?
And the other thing I would say too is that, I mean, you have to, I think, learning more and more that you kind of just have to take the emotion out of it when look at numbers, because there's guys that you don't want to get rid of, and then you're like, look, it's just not working. I need to find a hole and bring some numbers in. So trying to be level-headed about that too today was helpful, I think, to try and kind of turn some things around this week, I hope.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for me last week, the offense carried me. I took every offensive category except for doubles. Todd beat me by 1, and we tied double plays turned. My guys hit 303 last week. I mean, anytime you've got guys hitting 303 with a 932 OPS, that's a damn good week. De La Cruz has been insane. He had 4 home runs for me last week, 7 RBIs. Stole a base. Acuna's starting to heat up a little bit. 4 stolen bases over the last week. Adolis Garcia stole 3, along with 4 RBIs. So I had great production out of my offensive guys. The pitching wasn't as good as it had been. Burns had a great start to the week, and then Milwaukee kind of roughed him up in his second start. So, the pitching wise, I was almost running the table, but then Todd snuck in a couple of the categories on Sunday with some good pitching from his guys. So, I have no complaints right now other than the fact that Spencer Strider's hurt, but that's not affecting my fantasy team. That's just affecting my regular team. So we'll use that to segue to injuries. It's been officially confirmed he's on he's done for the year, season-ending UCL repair surgery. Now they did the internal brace, so he can return after as few as 9 months, so closer to probably 9 to 12 months instead of the typical 12 to 18 with the regular Tommy John. So that's encouraging, at least, that they could do the internal brace. KB, I know we were all shocked to see he went down. He exited early with soreness in his ribs and back. Day to day, I don't believe he needed to go on the IL. I didn't see an update on that. Carlos Correa went on the 10-day with a right oblique strain. Brock Burke of the Rangers, a left-handed starter, 15-day IL. He decided to do Huascar Yanoa and break his non-throwing hand while punching a wall after the Astros beat the crap out of him. Now, I shouldn't say a Yanoa, because at least Burke was smart enough to use his non-pitching hand as opposed to his pitching hand.
Somehow that's better.
Somehow. Well, because even if your hand's still a little bruised up, it's in the glove. It'll be fine. Yeah. I saw Bobby Miller went on the 15-day, the starter from Los Angeles. John Birdie, the can pretty much plug him almost anywhere in the field guy for the Yankees, formerly of the Marlins. 10-day IL with a left abductor strain. Trevor Story officially done for the year. He did undergo successful shoulder surgery to repair that torn labrum. So I don't know what it is that Trevor Story could stay so damn healthy all those years in Colorado, and then he gets to Boston and the dude can't stay healthy one bit. It's almost like watching Anthony Rendon go from Washington to Anaheim. Did I say that? And yes. Then and then Cody Bradford, a lefty from Texas, 15-day IL with a low back strain. That's a big loss for the Rangers. He's currently leading baseball in WHIP and walks per 9, so that's one to keep an eye on for Rangers fans. And then just came down today, unfortunately, Joe, your guy, Seiya Suzuki, the 10-day IL with an oblique strain. That sucks because Seiya's been hitting the ball really well. Even if the average wasn't completely there because of some great defense, every time he's been hitting that ball, it's been loud.
Yeah.
So
more on that in the Cubs section of the show.
Yeah, hopefully it won't be long.
Yeah.
So, looking at these injuries, we're going to focus a little bit more on pitchers again, because obviously they're the higher profile injury guys. They're the guys that are most likely to get hurt just due to the nature of their job versus the hitters. So let's look again, Joe. This list of pitchers who have suffered significant injuries: Spencer Strider, Shane Bieber, Jonathan Loaizaga, Yuri Perez, Trevor Gott, Bobby Miller. You have Garrett Cole, who has not started really. He's thrown at flat ground twice now. He's not really starting to ramp up yet because he can't come off the IL till the end of May anyway. Skip Shoemaker, the Marlins manager, who I must say I like a lot more than Don Mattingly, said, quote, "We have to figure this out as an industry. As an organization, the whole deal. We're all trying to figure this out to keep the best players out there. As much as I don't want to see Strider facing us, I want to see him pitch in the major leagues for a long time. We have to figure this out, and it starts down at the youth sports, honestly. My son's in high school, and he has a kid in his team that's having Tommy John surgery. So it starts down below, and the whole baseball community has to figure this thing out." Jeff Passons pointed out, ESPN writer, the elbow crisis has been building for decades from youth levels to the major leagues. I feel like we mentioned that last week. And nobody in a position of power has done anything of substance to address it. This is not a bad stretch of luck or an anomaly. It's an existential problem for baseball. Let's look at the players recovering from Tommy John. Shohei, Jacob deGrom, Sandy Alcantara, Robbie Ray, Shane McClanahan, Walker Buehler, Lucas Giolito, Felix Bautista, Dustin May, Andrew Painter, Shane Baz, Kumar Rocker, Ian Anderson. And I know I'm missing guys. I know that's not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Passons noted disappointment in both statements that the league and MLBPA released last week, noting that MLB is only focusing on one single issue. Now, it's not an unreasonable issue to be pissed off about. They are right about that. But, and while MLB's response discussed velocity and spin, the John Hopkins University study, but here's the thing, nothing has been released from the study to the public. It's in peer review, so any proclamation about the study, I'm going to be honest, Joe, I don't really give a crap about.
I can see your point there. There's a lot of decisions that have been made in the last couple of years on studies that haven't been released yet. So, yeah. I mean, that's the only thing I would push back on that part is there's a lot of decisions in the world that were made on studies that weren't peer reviewed and released yet.
Yeah, I know where you're going with that.
No, I'm not.
I'm not going to hop in on the some of the COVID issues. We won't go back into that far. Because it's not quite the same as ongoing baseball injuries versus an ongoing worldwide pandemic that they're trying to stem. But that's neither here nor there. But the thing is, like, baseball wants to quote this Hopkins study. They haven't even released the non-peer-reviewed data to the public. So that's great. You're going to quote a study that's not been peer-reviewed, which is a big no-no in my book, and that we know nothing about, but you're going to quote it like it's gospel. No, I'm not buying that.
Yeah. I totally, I get where you're coming from. I'm not questioning that.
So pitchers, they've always gotten hurt. They're always going to get hurt, but the causes of more from longer term overuse injuries to the shorter burst, high intensity muscle and ligament skin handle injuries. Here's a big thing Passons pointed out that I love. The teams are incentivizing the pitchers to throw in a way that many experts believe is the root cause of the game's injury issues. As much as velocity correlates with injuries, it does so similar with productivity. Throw harder, perform better. And Tyler Glasnow, you shared the video earlier. Tyler Glasnow said straight up, yeah, it's a risk I think about every single time I pitch, but I'm not going to stop throwing hard because he wants that paycheck.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, and we talked about it some last week, is that, you know, what gets the most play on social media? Hard throwing and a ton of movement.
Mm-hmm.
And who's going to emulate that? Kids.
Yep.
I mean, it's a problem throughout the system. It's Passon is right about that. You know, I do think that, you know, that there's an incentive to do things differently than there used to be. Back, you know, in the days of Glavine and Maddox, and no, I'm not a part owner of the Braves, but I can use those guys because it makes sense here. You know, we're not doing something, you know, we're incentivizing these guys in a different mentality. And I mean, Glasnow makes an interesting point about, I mean, I don't care because I know it's going to get eyeballs on me. He said, I've never been able to control very well. He openly said that. He said, but I'll throw as hard as I can because that's going to get me to the next level. And that's been the focus for many years. And that's been the problem. and that's a cultural problem within the sport. They're 100% right about that.
Yeah. Well, and remember Dr. James Andrews last week, he was quoted as saying these guys should not be throwing more than about 80, 85 miles an hour when they're in high school. The ligament's not developed enough to handle that stress of going much beyond that. But you don't see them with a radar gun out there saying, no, that's too fast. It's a repitch, like they do in some wiffle ball leagues where there's a speed top. Another thing to look at, the fact that the union wants more information on the pitch clock should matter to MLB. Even if the league did bargain during negotiations for a far shorter window to implement on-field rule changes, it can't ignore what the players continue to begrudge. It's not idle belly aching by the players. The pitchers want to understand why the extra 2 seconds shaved off the clock this year were so imperative, and why they aren't entitled to 1 or 2 timeouts a game when they feel some discomfort. I mean, even being able to step off and just take a walk to the back of the mound, hit the rosin, and catch your breath for 30 seconds might make a difference. Give your body a little bit of extra recovery time. And why there still isn't an accepted grip agent to help with the balls that they believe remain inconsistently manufactured. This is all issues of health. And we'll talk more about the slick ball issue that has, once again, early in the season been an issue. We'll talk about that again a little later. But, again, these are good points to be raised. And, as long as I don't care if I rehash this every week, even briefly. If I see more good data and more good reasons why, I'm going to bring it up because it's important that this is heard. It's important that this gets out there because we're hitting a crisis situation with injuries to pitchers. I mean, at some point, Joe, you almost wonder if it's going to be beneficial to keep your top prospects down in AAA until like August and then bring them up late to bring in that surge of fresh pitching instead of bringing them up for the whole season so that they don't feel that stress and that need to go max velo all the time.
Yeah, and again, the whole max velo thing is again that's a cultural problem that's been going on for years. That Hunter Green gets eyeballs because he throws 105, and Mason Miller for the A's who topped out at 104 yesterday. I mean, is it fun to see it sometimes? Yeah. Is it amazing what the body can do? Yes. Is it healthy for these athletes? Absolutely not. I would much rather have control than throw as hard as I can. And that's the one thing I push back on with the glass now thing is, yeah, okay, yes, it gets eyeballs on you and it gets you to the next level because you got swing and miss stuff. But if you can't locate it and you're going to be hurt all the time, and this is another thing too that I think has some consideration to it is what does Glasnow care if he misses an entire year? It's all guaranteed money. This isn't the NFL where you're not guaranteed your entire contract if you can't play. So you're going to make changes if that means you stay on the field more. Same thing with hockey. Same thing with every other sport. Baseball is the only sport where you can be out for the year. You're still going to make money. Ridiculous.
Yeah. Look at Anthony Rendon.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. The amount of that's the other thing I take issue with these players complaining about a lot of stuff. Like you have guaranteed money. You're making millions of dollars to play a child's game. Let's be serious about it, and get to play a game for your entire life, make millions of dollars doing it, and that's the thing that's sort of. It feels like we lose perspective sometimes. I feel like the players lose perspective sometimes too, and there just has to be a focus on the sport being what it is meant to be, and not being this, clickbait show and everything else. Just like everything in the world, everything is a clickbait or could be a clickbait article, and that's kind of what a lot of the social media stuff is.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of good points. And, I have to say, I wonder how the other players in the Dodgers feel after hearing Glasnow's comments. For other pitchers that are like, well, I'm going to have to pick up your slack when you get hurt because of this. So you're going to make a limited impact. You're not going to be there in the playoffs when we need you because you're going to blow it out during the regular season. Or the hitters that say, well, I feel like I have to carry this constantly because you're hurt. You're throwing recklessly, getting hurt. So we have to bring up a guy who's not as good as you, and that puts more strain on the offense. I haven't heard anything from the Dodgers dugout. I haven't heard anything on the social medias from other Dodgers players in reference to his comments yet, but I would be very curious to hear what any of them have to say about it.
Well, there's one thing about these guys, you're not going to hear that kind of stuff. It's not going to make it
Right.
out. Not
Yeah.
at the
Unwritten
Dodgers
rules.
organization.
Unwritten
This
rules.
isn't
It'll stay in the dugout.
Yeah, this isn't an organization that's run like the White Sox. You ain't going to hear any of that shit. Um,
Yeah, you're not wrong about that.
so, I mean, there's plenty of dysfunction on the South side, but there ain't going to be any. And if there is any dysfunction in the locker room, you're not going to hear about it.
Yeah.
I mean, the Dodgers played an awful game against the Padres last night, and you wouldn't know it if you watched the game on TV, because the TV game, the broadcast crew was all about how great the Dodgers are, even though the Dodgers got beat.
Yeah, that was the Sunday Night Baseball game on ESPN, wasn't it?
Shocker.
How
Right?
did I know?
Shocker. So they're they're on the level with the Lakers where they can be bad and still be celebrated.
I hate being on Sunday Night Baseball so much.
Yep.
I hate it. I won't if I watch it, I don't watch it with the audio playing from ESPN. I turn the radio on and listen to the Atlanta Braves radio station instead. I can't with those ESPN announcers. They're just awful.
It's just not an enjoyable TV product, and I'd rather hear about there was a lot of good that the Padres did in that ball game last night, and it's completely overshadowed by the entire game being talking about how great the Dodgers are. And it's like, okay, like, really?
They might be great, but they weren't great last night.
You spent $1 billion on 2 guys, 3 guys. Like, come on, stop.
Yep. All right, so let's talk about teams that aren't spending obscene amounts of money on 2 players alone, and we'll talk about the Cubs. You managed a 500 record last week, Joe, in the first two out of 3 legs the West Coast trip. You only took 1 out of 3 in San Diego. You lost games 1-3, 9-8, and 10-2, but you won game 2 5-1. And then you had a good rebound against the Mariners. You lost game 1 4-2, but then games 2 and 3 you took 4-1 and 3-2. So, anytime you go out west, it's always a tough road trip. I'd say a 500 record on a road trip out west is a good thing. What do you think?
It's off to a good start. I think, before I get into more detail on the week, I think if you would have told me that we would lose Justin Steele in the middle of opening night, Jameson Taillon wasn't starting the year, and Ben Brown would be called up on day 2 to the big league club, and we would be 9-6 after playing the Dodgers, the Padres, the Mariners. Now we're going to play the Diamondbacks in the first 3 weeks of the year. 9-6, I'm good. I'm good. If you would have told me that we would be in that position with the unknowns that entered the season. We have, our one of our top bullpen arms just went down too. Now Seiya's down. Like, if you had told me that before Seiya went down that we'd be 9-6 on that schedule, I'm good.
And don't forget, you open the year with the freaking defending World Series champions.
Right. The only team that we have played so far that wasn't great is Colorado. I mean, that's saying something.
Yeah.
So I think to be in this spot is a good spot to be in. Obviously, game 1 they were up 8-0 and blew that. So that wasn't great against the Padres. Game 2 game 3, I think, was Kyle's game, and Kyle has been awful to get started off the year. He always starts a bit slow, but a lot of conversation on Cubs media last week, and social media in particular, that Kyle's washed and they need to cut him and this and that and the other thing. And it's like, first off, did you see the way he pitched last year? Second off, he's been in the game a long time. Third off, no. Like there's a lot of unprovens here. We might get Tyone back later this week. I think he's back with the club as of this road trip to Arizona. Steele, you're not sure how quickly he's coming back. Maybe he might see some live BP this weekend. Might do a live session this week when they're back home. But there's a lot of unknowns there. And look, it's 3 starts. He doesn't usually start fast, and his sinker command has been off. That's been a big issue. Everything else looks great. The command on the sinker has been a problem. So that's something that he'll improve on. He always does. I think considering the lineups he's going up against, I mean, I'm not too worried. Yeah, I mean, if it were a consistent thing and he wasn't pitching well last year, you may want to think about it. But you're in the last year of his contract. It's a player option that they have. So it's one of those things where I think there was a lot made out of his start, but I'm not too worried about it because Kyle's Kyle. You can't be too disappointed with how Shohei has started off the year. 3 starts against some pretty good teams. He's gone 15 innings. He's not given up an earned run yet. He did give up 1 run yesterday, but not earned. 16 strikeouts, a .73 WHIP, and only 2 walks. Like, you could not have asked for anything better out of Shohei Imanaga, out of an unknown. And I mean, of the big Japanese players pitching wise that were on the market, this looks like a steal so far.
A steal's an understatement. Honestly, he has been the class of the Japanese pitchers so far, I think.
Yeah, you're literally a rain delay away from being 3-0.
Yeah,
that's the only reason he's not 3-0.
Yeah,
it's crazy to me.
And Joe, to your point about Kyle Hendricks, I pulled up his first half, second half splits for his career. First half, 46 and 41. That's a 5.29 winning percentage and a 3.67 ERA. Second half, 41 and 23, 6.41 winning percentage and a 3.35 ERA.
Yeah.
He gives up 93 home runs in the first half, 60 home runs in the second half. Walks 172 in the first half, 141 in the second half. And the one caveat I'll say is he does have about 14 more starts in the first half than the second half in his career. Okay.
Right.
But still, I think that's significant enough of a difference to say, yeah, look at the numbers. He's just a slow starter. It'll be okay. If this continues into June, that's a different conversation.
And I think too, having Steele and Tyone down, it's like, okay, you're asking the guy who probably should have been your 4-5 guy to be your leader in the clubhouse. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot of pressure there. He takes it personally. You know that. You watch it when you watch him pitch.
Oh yeah.
He freaking can't stand when he lets his team down, and he owned it. Last week he's like, I'm not doing what I need to do. Something's not quite right there. It's not quite there yet, and no blaming this, no blaming that, and good clubhouse leader. He'll figure it out. It's not something I'm too overly worried about. The big story, I think, from an offensive standpoint for the Cubs so far is their patience at the plate. Ian Happ has, up until Saturday, had gotten on base in every game so far this year. So that's what you love to see about it. Michael Busch, who's a rock star the last week, 4 homers in 4 straight games. We'll see what he does tonight against Merrill Kelly. But his rankings right now among rookies, has a 170 WRC plus, 4 homers, which is first in the majors among rookies, 9 RBIs. Already, he's got a exit velo of 92.7 and a 17% barrel rate. The guy's finding the ball, and his patience is paying off. I think all of his 5 homers, I heard Pat Hughes say yesterday, are on 2-strike counts. So he's finding his pitches. He's being very patient at the plate. And that also looks like a steal right now off of the Dodgers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've seen what the Dodgers infield looks like right now. In spots with Gavin Lux and Muncy. I think, you know, I think we won that trade so far.
I would say without a doubt you won that trade so far.
Yeah.
All right, so let's take a look here. Moving on to one I'm going to bump in quick, Joe. I forgot to put the topic sheet. Just want to give a shout out to Andrew McCutcheon hitting his 300th home run over the weekend, hitting that, checking off one more milestone. Just a guy I've always had a blast watching him play. It doesn't matter whether he's with the Phillies, the Pirates, it doesn't matter. He's just a fun guy to watch. He is now over 2,000 hits. He's got 300 home runs, a 275 career average. He's scored over 1,100 runs, over 1,000 RBIs, and more than 200 stolen bases. He's one of only 18 guys to do that. That's freaking impressive, man.
Yeah, I mean that he loves the game too, which is even nicer. He just loves to play, and that's when you see a guy have success who just loves to play the game. It's really fun.
It's just a blast.
Yeah.
All righty, let's move it on then, Joe. Next up, I have Frtiz Peterson passing away. Former Yankees left-hander, best known for trading wives with his teammate Mike Kekich. He died at age 82. He threw 52 complete games in a 4-year span from 1969 to 1972. I think if you asked all of baseball to throw 52 complete games over the next 4 years, I think the pitchers would break down, honestly. You're not going to see that ever again. Statement from the Yankees. They say, quote, "The Yankees are deeply saddened to learn of the passing of Frtiz Peterson, who was a formidable pitcher and affable presence throughout his 9 years in pinstripes. Along with longtime teammate Mel Stottlemyre, Peterson was part of a devastating 1-2 combination at the top of the Yankees' rotation. A known prankster and well-liked among his teammates and coaches, Peterson had an outgoing personality, an inquisitive nature that brought lightheartedness to the clubhouse on a regular basis and belied his prowess on the mound, most notably his impeccable control, which was among the best in the majors. Peterson will be greatly missed by the Yankees, and we offer our heartfelt condolences to his wife, Suzanne, and the entire Peterson family." So overall, Joe, 133 and 131. I know not flashy win-loss numbers, but that's with a 3.30 ERA, 90 complete games for his entire career over 355 starts. That was over 11 seasons. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah, that's the complete game thing. That's just we'll never see anything close to that ever again.
And then the whole wife swap thing. He and Mike Kekich, they traded wives during spring training in 1973. Suzanne Kekich later married Peterson in 74, and they remained married until he died. Marilyn Peterson and Mike Kekich did not work out, as she left him pretty quickly, if I recall right. Kekich once said that there was an agreement to call the whole thing off if anyone wasn't happy, but by that point, Peterson and Suzanne were married, so he was SOL JWF. So, what can you do? So rest in peace to Peterson. You don't see pitchers made like him anymore. And then speaking of pitchers you don't see really made like that anymore, how about Doc Gooden, man? The Mets finally retired number 16. He was, before the game, he was recounting his career, lamenting how his career in Queens was cut short by drugs and alcohol, forcing him to sign across town prior to 96. He said, quote, "I wanted to stay and make things right with you guys. I didn't want to leave on the note that I did. Unfortunately, they thought it was best that we go separate ways. I was lucky enough to stay in New York, play with the Yankees for 2 years, 96 and 97. The crowd at that point, of course, booed because
yes, of course it did.
But then he said, I'm always a Met. I'm not saying nothing. I'm always a Met. I'm always a Met." So number 16, he is joining number 14, Gil Hodges, number 17, Keith Hernandez, number 24, Willie Mays, which I still disagree with them retiring Willie Mays, but we're not getting into that tonight. 31, Mike Piazza, 36, Jerry Koosman, 37, the great Professor Casey Stengel, and 41, Tommy Terrific, Tom Seaver. Later this year, the Mets will also be retiring Darryl Strawberry's 18, and that'll be on June 1st. Let me tell you, if they weren't retiring Doc and Darryl in the same year, there would have been something seriously wrong about that. Because what was more synonymous of their time together on the Mets than Doc and Daryl?
Yeah, and Daryl was, I think, there yesterday. It looked like on the video. So
Yeah, he was there.
It's nice that they got some of those guys together. Um, you know, I tell you what, there's one job I didn't want yesterday, and that was being on top of the roof at Citi Field to pull that cover off the number in the weather.
Yeah,
Holy cow.
that looked a little sus. that looked a little sus.
Yeah, that made me nervous. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I was waiting either for that banner to go flying down into the seats or for one of the guys trying to grab it and pull it up to go being carried down by the banner to the seats. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that ended up being a safe thing. So while he was playing with the Mets, he won the 1984 Rookie of the Year, the 85 Cy Young. He won 194 games in his career to go with 2,293 strikeouts. Helped the Mets win the series in 86, still their most recent and second overall in franchise history. Unfortunately, he did have issues with substance abuse, being suspended from June of 94 through the entirety of 95. He spent 7 months in prison in 2006 and was arrested several times for DUI. But happily, he's been clean since 2019, so mad props to him. He regularly speaks at New York area schools about avoiding drugs and alcohol. He's been given a second chance, and he's taken it to heart. You can tell. Look it up on YouTube. Any number of his speeches that he gives to students are on there. You could tell he's truly a changed man who regrets his years of substance abuse and the cocaine and everything else he did with Daryl. So, it's good to see that.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good redemption story for sure.
Yeah. All right, and then the Phillies. They took 2 out of 3 in St. Louis, winning games 1 and 3, 5-3 and 10, and 4-3. But they lost game 2, 3-0. And then they split the first poop series of the year with the Pirates, winning games 1 and 3, 5-1, 4-3, and then lost games 2 and 4, 5-2, and 9-2. So, fun fact I discovered on Saturday, Joe. All 5 of Schwarber's plate appearances came against lefties, making it the first time in his career that he reached base 5 times in the same game against the same-handed pitching. Those are the cool kind of stats that make baseball awesome.
Yeah, they are. That's pretty neat.
Especially that he did it against the lefties because he's a left-handed batter. That's even more impressive. So, and yes, I did have him on. He was playing that day for me as well. Yeah. And then I was smart, sat him the next day because he went, I think, 1 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. So I played that one very well.
Yeah, the one thing I'd say about the Phillies week, I know Jason had some stuff going on today before the game and whatnot. But they've started off slow. Particularly Bryce has started off slow. Castellanos finally got some positive momentum yesterday, I guess it was.
They can take them off the septobuses so they avoid getting hit.
Maybe, I don't know. But I think overall, yes, you're a little nervous as Philly fans, and I totally understand it. I do think that they're going to straighten some things out and turn things around a bit. We've talked a bit in the group chat the last few days. It kind of felt like Bryce was pressing a little bit, trying to do too much, and trying to get the ball rolling. And I think everybody will get there offensively. As you commonly talk about, Andrew, it's not quite warm enough at Citizens Bank for balls to just fly out of there. So, I think they'll figure it out offensively. They're just not making strong enough contact. They're hitting into a lot of double plays, I think, from what I saw. So, they'll get that all straightened out, I think, pretty quick, I hope.
Yeah, I agree. Harper is, I think, the biggest surprise to a slow start because he's not typically a super slow starter. Granted, I think that both of the last 2 years he's been hurt to start the year. So, that is what it is. But Harper's pressing. I'm going to go with what I said in the group chat from my observations watching a couple Phillies games, especially the opening series against Atlanta. He's pressing. It's not the yips. It's nothing like that. He's just pressing. He's putting a lot of pressure on himself because he's upset he's not producing for his team because that's his job. And, he takes that job seriously. He just needs to loosen up and he'll be fine. And yeah, Joe, you're right. You and I and Jason and Ron, we've all seen it. The Phillies, when it's cold out versus the Phillies when it's hot out, when they're at home, it's all the difference in the world. That ballpark is a launching pad in summer, and it's just not during the cold months. So, yeah, they'll probably be fine. Look at Trey Turner. He basically slept through 2/3, 3/4 of the year last year, and then caught fire. So, I'm not going to be. I'm not going to be too worried about the Phillies. I think they'll be fine and they'll catch up. All right, so we're going to hop ahead to the slick balls that I had alluded to earlier. Kenley Jansen is the latest of pitchers to complain about them. He said, quote, "If you're playing in the cold weather, windy, and you get Pearl's balls out there that's not rubbed well, I don't know where the ball is going." And just so everybody knows who doesn't watch baseball a lot, when he's talking about rubbed, he's talking about the Mississippi River mud that they rub onto the baseballs to make them a little bit dirty so they're less shiny and easier to grip and easier for the hitters to see as well. He noted that the bullpen balls were better rubbed than the game balls. "It's embarrassing. It's been a while. I've been playing in this league, and from the beginning of my career until now, it's been getting worse. It's been an issue the whole year. I've been talking to a lot of my teammates, and they feel the same way. First pitch, get out of my hand. I don't know where it's going. Second pitch, same thing. Then I've tried to throw a ball down the middle just to keep going down. It's tough trying to make an adjustment, and also you have the clock ticking." And he brings up a great point there as well. Really, and Jansen in particular has been known to be one of the slowest working relievers. I don't know if he led the league in pitch clock violations last year, but before the pitch clock was out there, he was, I think, 5+ seconds ahead of the second slowest pitcher in working speed. So, especially if these guys are trying to find a grip on the ball that works, it goes back to why have we not formed this committee yet to figure out what is the best solution in the cold weather to help pitchers grip the ball? Because even if it gives them a slight uptick in spin rate, if it lets them figure out where the ball's going and not hit people in the wrist, breaking wrists, causing injuries, I feel like that's a fair trade-off. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think clearly they need to come up with a solution, and we've talked about that a lot. That there has to be a trade-off here. If you want to speed up the game, they have to be able to control the baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can't control the baseball, more people are getting hurt. The Josh Jungs of the world are going to be out for periods of time. And originally that was supposed to be 6 weeks. It's 8 to 10 because they found more damage when they were in on the surgery. So, you're putting a guy down for 3 months of the season or more because the guy couldn't grip the baseball properly. And maybe that one just got away from him. Maybe that wasn't a control problem, but still, that kind of stuff is happening. And in order to keep, everybody on the field, I think we've got to try to make some changes there. If you're going to speed the game up, you've got to find a way to go the other way a little bit with some of the safety concerns for sure. Back to what we were talking about with the pitching stuff. The extra 2 seconds makes no sense to me, especially if you're not going to do anything to help improve the grip of the ball.
You want to know something funny, Joe? I don't remember our control guys like Maddox and Glavine losing control nearly at the rate these high velo guys do that are just trying to pump the highest speed they can. Funny how that works. Here's to control guys. All right, and then the Orioles, great start to the week. They swept the Red Sox on the road, and then they dropped 2 out of 3 of the Brewers at home. And that one surprised me because not only did they drop 2 out of 3 to the Brewers at home, they got crushed. Like, none of the scores were even the game, even Sunday when they managed to stop the sweep, they had to come from behind. And it was just not pretty offense for the Orioles against the Brewers, and their pitching did not handle too well. So, like I said, against the Red Sox, no issues. They did what they were supposed to do. Jackson Holliday, he is up. He has reached the majors after that ridiculous demotion to AAA out of spring training to, quote, work on hitting high-level lefties. Yeah, that's such bullshit. I'm glad he's up.
Well, and I think that obviously was that was team speak for a lot of things, but I do think there was a lot of pressure when he made his debut last week, and then it took him until Sunday to get a hit. and people were saying all sorts of stuff. And it's like, look, it's a huge adjustment. The kid's 20 years old, if that. Like
I,
it's
I don't care if he's Matt Holliday's kid and he spent his whole life around major league clubs and got to
no.
hit major league level pitching younger than kids his age. It's still a big jump.
Yeah, it's a huge jump, and I'm happy to see he got the you know Twitter trolls off his back by getting a hit, and getting things going in the right direction. And truthfully, I mean, you're gonna have a bump like this, you know, in the beginning of the season. You're gonna have a series that just doesn't go right. You got a bunch of guys who are trying to gel together still a little bit there with the call ups and things. So I don't think there's a ton to worry about with the Orioles on this one. I do think I think Burns got tattooed pretty good, and I don't remember which game it was over the weekend, but
Sunday.
he didn't do too well obviously this weekend. And maybe there's some former team in that whole thing, and the guys know how he pitches. So I mean, you've been watching his bullpens for 8 years or at least, so you kind of know how he throws. So I mean, I chalk that up as a blip if it were me.
Yeah, agreed. And not only did Jackson Holiday get his first hit Sunday, he also scored the game-winning run as well. So take that, Twitter trolls. You deserve it. All right. So, Joe, who needs to read the room this week?
Well, first I'm going to start with Juan Soto. There was a play at first base yesterday where it was clearly not not going to be an obstruction call against Josh Naylor for the Guardians playing first base, and he shoves him out of the way. Like, it wasn't an aggressive shove, don't get me wrong, but there's just no reason for it. I mean, we've talked a ton over the last 2 weeks, you and I have for sure, about player safety, and that's just don't be stupid. Like, you play for the Yankees, you're one of the best, most talented guys there. Just don't be dumb. And don't be and it's one of those things too where he doesn't get tossed from the game for doing it when he probably could have been. To me, that just seems kind of weird. Because another guy does that, they're probably tossing him. And the other thing too is, Juan, you're fast enough to get back to first. Like, just beat him next time.
Yeah.
Just beat the play next time. There's no reason to do a extracurricular shove for no reason that doesn't benefit anybody. And it may have been playful. Just to me, it looked really stupid to do.
Yeah, wholehearted agreement.
And then the other
yeah.
one is Major League Baseball in general. We talk about this a ton, but like, look, you want to grow the game, you have an MLB package. One of the great reasons I'm happy I'm a T-Mobile cell phone guy is because I get the TV package for free every year. And now I got to find some other way to watch the game. Like, stop. You want to grow the game, but you make it harder than ever to watch it. Just stop it.
Because not only do you can't watch the ESPN Sunday night game, that's exclusive to ESPN, and I don't think you can watch those games with ESPN Plus. I think it has to be ESPN cable. They have the Apple TV game on Friday nights, and now, if I read correctly, some games are going to be exclusively streamed on HBO Max.
There might be some of that. There was some games on Peacock last year too.
Yeah.
Like, if you're gonna try and grow the game, and yes, there's a ton of people who have streaming and they have all sorts of streaming avenues that they use. But at the same time, like, one of the things about with the NFL is that there are 3 channels that a football game is going to be on a Sunday: CBS, Fox, or NBC. It's not hard to find it.
And you know what else with the NFL? You and I are NFC North fans living by Philadelphia. So we don't get to see our Bears and Vikings play that often unless they're playing, the Commanders, the Ravens, the Eagles, the Giants, the Jets. We don't get to see them, or unless it's one of the featured games of the week. But if we have NFL Red Zone, we're not blocked by blackout restrictions. We can watch our teams.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. The blackout restrictions to all the different platforms. there's a lot of guys that cover the teams who are like telling you not to bitch about it. And it's like, look, you're making the game harder to access, and there's just no point to it.
It's dumb.
It's stupid. It's absolutely insane.
Yep. And Joe, there was actually one network this week that did read the room. Last night during the CBS was airing Billy Joel's 100th consecutive sellout at Madison Square Gardens. It started late because the Masters ran late, and then whatever cop show that ran between the Masters and Billy Joel, they decided needed to run in its entirety, so Billy Joel started late. And then as he's doing his final number, as he's doing Piano Man, how he's closed every concert, his entire professional career as an artist gets cut off right before the end. They only needed another minute or two, but they cut to local weather. There were no storms going on anywhere last night that were life-threatening and needed a cut to local weather at that point. Fans flooded CBS's social media pages with outrage, and in a statement released today by CBS, they said a network programming timing error ended last night's Billy Joel special approximately 2 minutes early in the Eastern and Central time zones. We apologize to Mr. Joel, his fans, our affiliated stations, and our audience whose viewing experience was interrupted during the last song. Due to the overwhelming demand from his legion of fans, Billy Joel, the 100th, live at Madison Square Garden, will be rebroadcast in its entirety on CBS on April 19th at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Pacific. So, you know what? I'm going to give CBS their props. They read the room, and they owned up to the mistake that they made, and they made what I think is a very fair and reasonable correction to it. Now, if only Major League Baseball would do the same.
Yeah, it's easy to when there's an unforced error like that, just fix it, be done with it, own it, and be done with it.
And they did.
So, last thing, read the room in honor of Tax Day is the IRS. For no other context is needed there.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? I know someone who is still owed money from last year by the IRS, and shocker, they still haven't received it. What else is new? And billionaires still aren't getting taxed enough, but what am I saying? Anyway, so moving on to the Braves. The Mets series got affected by weather. Wednesday got postponed until September, which is annoying. I thought they should have just played a freaking doubleheader and gotten it over with. So the Braves dropped 2 out of 3. They lost games 1 and 3. They won game 2. And then, as they've done the last couple of years, they saw the Marlins and said, oh, okay, we're just going to beat the crap out of the Marlins. So they took 2 out of 3 there. Just some quick thoughts. The Mets series, that was a complete mess. I mean, you had weather issues. You had that 16-4 blowout. Alan Winans made his MLB debut, and he got beaten the hell up in that game. But that was also punctuated by some uncharacteristically poor defense as well. I think the Braves had 4 of the 16 runs they gave up, 4 or 5 of those runs were unearned. One of the relievers, every run he gave up was unearned. So that, you can't shoot yourself in the foot. And also, games like that are going to happen. Move on. They did it. They beat the Marlins the next night out, so they'd already put it behind them. Also, Snit left some pitchers on it longer than he might have done typically because it was a blowout, and he wanted to save some guys' arms. And I don't have any problem with the manager doing that. I don't think he brought a position player out to finish the game, but I wouldn't have blamed him if he did that as well. And, the rebound was exactly what they needed. And it was frankly, I thought it was as expected. Marcell Ozuna, holy shit. He started so slow last season. He's been on fire this season. He hit a go-ahead 3-run homer off the Marlins closer, Tanner Scott. And for the series against the Marlins, he annihilated them, Joe, 7 for 12, 2 homers and 8 RBIs.
Yeah. Some thoughts on the Braves, if I can.
Yeah.
I was listening to Locked On Braves podcast today, kind of getting their recap of the weekend. They thought that Fried I don't remember which day he pitched, but Fried pitched this weekend and he looked a lot better than he has to start the year. And it sounded like he did more of what he's good at as opposed to what you've seen, I think, a lot so far this year is you've seen some players try to make some tweaks to start the year and it hasn't paid off. And I think for Fried, that's probably the case. They tried to make some tweaks to what he was doing, and when he just did what he does best, he did pretty well over the weekend. The other thing I heard was some concern about Morton because that game should have been a little smoother yesterday, but he did not pitch as well as he could and let them back in there. That's at least what I was hearing from some of that.
I watched that game yesterday. I would agree. I think Morton's at an age now where, one, let's remember he's old enough that he has played against both the Florida Marlins and the Miami Marlins. Yes, he's been around for that long. Mm-hmm. Two, he's just at the point in his career where you need to have a fairly quick hook with him. And he's not going to like it because that's not his mentality. He still thinks he can work through everything, but the stuff isn't quite what it was when he was younger. And when he's starting to get pegged, give him a yank and just tell him, good job. See you next time. And you're also, I think, going to see, you're also going to see the Braves probably slipping in some 6-man rotations here and there to help give a little more rest for Morton and Sale. Sale with his injury history, although he pitched really well last week. And, Morton just being older, give him a little extra rest. They'll be fine.
I also heard just in the minors last week there wasn't a lot of great performances in Gwinnett and whatnot from some of the guys that you might bring up to sort of alleviate some of that. I'm hoping they can kind of turn some of that around, but
yeah, Gwinnett had a very rough week last week. The pitching was not what it needs to be. Right. Hold on, let me pull it up here. I know they've had one guy, I can't remember who it was, but he's been winning almost every challenge they've thrown at him, and he's done very well with it. But just as a team, Gwinnett has, I think, generally struggled this year. A little bit surprisingly because they started the year pretty well. But yeah, it's gonna happen. Here I've got where's the roster? There it is. Again, Ian Anderson not started throwing yet. We're not going to start seeing him throw until May. Bryce Elder, he was the guy that was expected to be one of the first ones up. The reason he didn't come up right away when Strider got hurt, it's not because of performance. He had just pitched the night before. So that's why Winans was selected to come up instead, because that way Winans was available out of the bullpen if they needed him, but if not, he would be able to step in and start. But, Dylan Dodd has not been as expected. Elder has not pitched as well as they've expected. Smith Shaver has looked okay, but hasn't been as good as they'd like. And Wasker, he's still working back from Tommy John. He's not quite ready to come back up. And honestly, when Yanoa comes up, his spot's really in the back end of the bullpen. He's a 2-pitch guy, and I just don't think he's going to find long-term success as a starter with only a fastball and a slider.
Yeah, it's hard to find long-term success as a starter with only a 2-pitch mix. It really is.
It's it's like you said with the Cubs. You're going to have rough patches in the early going, and you just have to work through them and trust that players will work through them. And really, the biggest thing for Atlanta, they just the pitching staff needs to stay healthy. Let the guys in AAA have a little more time to cook, and then that way, when they need to call somebody up, hopefully it's a bit better than Winans last start. Winans already been sent back down after his pretty horrific start against the Mets. So I'm not.
It sounded like since he was already up, they didn't want to waste the option. It sounded like too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you're going to see that. So, all right. So that was Atlanta this past week. It definitely could have been better, but it also could have been a lot worse. So I'm not going to complain. Let's move into the hot list, Joe. I've got my top 3 this week. Number 1 is Colton Cowser of the Orioles, an outfielder. He hit .435, 482, 1.130 slugging, 6 runs scored, 4 homers, 12 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, 10 hits, 4 doubles, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts. My second guy was Elly De La Cruz, as I alluded to earlier, 348, 400, 913. 8 hits, a double, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts, 8 runs, 4 homers, 7 RBIs, a stolen base, and at least one of those home runs was inside the park. And then Marcell Ozuna, 458, 519, 875, 11 hits, a double, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts, 4 runs, 3 home runs, 11 RBIs. Who else are you adding to the hot list for the hitters this week, Joe?
Kaiser was the main one I was going to focus on, but I'm going to add one that is, yes, he had a decent week, but also kind of tongue-in-cheek. Mr. Anthony Rendon had 10 hits last week, which is remarkable considering he went almost a year without one. Scored 5 runs, 11 total bases in the last week, a double, an RBI, and 2 walks. So some positive progress for him. He went from a 0.94 batting average to 236, so he's heating up. And his odd base percentage went from 147 to 295. So look, you laugh, but hey, it's positive news for Anthony Rendon when it's not his top priority. So
did you really say 147?
His odd base went from 147 to 295. Yeah.
Good God.
So 150 point rise in on base almost, and he got above the Mendoza line in batting average. So look, things are trending in the right direction. If only he made this sport his priority, imagine what would happen.
Yeah, that's exactly it. All right, Joe, who's the Moneyball hitter of the week?
Moneyball this week is Pete Alonso. The line for him, average-wise, 529 on base, 636, and OPS of 1930. 7 runs, 9 hits, 2 doubles, 4 homers, or 1 double and 4 homers, sorry. 7 RBIs, 5 walks, and 2 strikeouts. A big reason that they were able to sort of have a good week this past week.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a pain. He was a thorn in the side of Atlanta all week. So for that whole series. So yeah, no arguments from me there. Moving into the pitchers, my first top pitcher this week, Jose Barrios, 2 starts, 2-0, 2 quality starts, 13 2/3, ERA of 0, WHIP of 0.66, 6 walks, 6 hits, 3 walks, and 13 strikeouts. I'm also going to toss up Mitch Keller of the Pirates, 2-0, 2 quality starts, 13 innings, 4 earned runs, 13 hits, a 277 ERA, a 123 WHIP, 13 strikeouts, 3 walks, 1 home run allowed. And then a guy I didn't think I was going to pick anything at all this year. I'm going to go with good old nasty Nestor Cortez of the Yankees, even though he got away with a balk last week because the umpire's an idiot. In 2 starts, he went 1-0. He had a 3 ERA, a 0.67 WHIP, 12 strikeouts in 12 innings, 4 earned runs, 7 hits, a walk, 2 home runs allowed. So, honestly, a rather surprising week for Nestor Cortez. I did not expect that at all. I pretty honestly, considering he got thrusted from a 3-4 role into ace because of injuries, I was not expecting even close to that, and that's moderately surprising.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta give him an A for effort on that move, man. That move is pretty.
How is that not called a damn balk? I don't understand. And to be fair, I don't think any umpire actually understands what the balk rule is. But what the hell was that? Anyway. Joe, who's your top pitcher of the week?
The only top pitcher I had, he only made 1 start, but Tyler Glasnow, 7 innings, 3 hits, no runs, 14 strikeouts. The WHIP of 0.43, that's amazing for a starter. I know it's only 1 start, but still a good week for him.
Yeah, can't argue with 14 strikeouts. All right, Joe, who is the adulting reliever of the week?
The adulting reliever of the week is the aforementioned earlier Mason Miller of Oakland. 3 for 3 in save opportunities, no hits, no runs, 7 strikeouts. So a nice 0 WHIP and a 0 batting average against. Talk about a week.
Yeah, it's hard to go 3 for 3 in saves and not give up a run like that. That's very, very well done.
No hits, no runs, 7 strikeouts. Just absolutely amazing performance from him this week for them, for sure.
Yeah. And rolling into the hot teams, I didn't think I was going to say this at all for years. I'm going to put Oakland on the list, man. They went 4-2 last week. They took 2 out of 3 from the Rangers on the road. They took 2 out of 3 from the Nationals. They're playing really good baseball right now, surprisingly.
Yeah, a very strong last week or so. The series before that, they took from the Tigers. I mean, this isn't, these aren't slouch teams. This isn't the White Sox by any means.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they played some really good competition and they found some success this past week. It's certainly some positive momentum for them. They were a team I had on my list as well.
I'm also going to throw out 2 AL Central teams. I know, shock. Cleveland Guardians 7-3 over their last 10. They're on a 2-game winning streak right now. The Kansas City Royals 10-6 overall, 8-2 in the last 10. They did lose yesterday, but they're playing the White Sox right now, so I'm sure they're going to do rather well against the 2-win White Sox. It pains me to say it, but I do have to have the Yankees on there. They're 12-4 right now, 7-3 in the last 10. And I think that's probably about where I'll leave it right now. Did you have anybody else you wanted to mention for the hot list? The NL teams nobody really stood out last week. The NL teams kind of cannibalized and beat the crap out of each other last week.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the Royals, obviously. I do think, given the way that the season started in Queens, the positive momentum they got last week, going 4 of 6 against your Braves and the Royals, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's some good positive momentum for them.
Yeah,
Um,
you're not
so,
wrong.
so that's to me why I kind of have them on this list this week. I feel like they needed a shot in the arm and some positive momentum, and they certainly got that this week. And we'll see if they can continue that here into this week.
Yeah. Yep, I can't argue with that, much as it pains me to admit it. Looking at the week coming up, Atlanta 3 at the Astros. Darius Vines was called up to take Winan's spot. He'll make his start against the Astros. Vines versus Arrighetti, Lopez versus Brown, Fried versus France, and then 3 versus the Rangers. Sale versus Eovaldi. I have Sale down there twice. Sale is not pitching 2 days in a row. That's a little whoops on my part, so my apologies. Let me give you the accurate probable. The second one should be
that might be his alter ego Saleh.
that would be his French alter ego, Christophe Salé. No, I think that's probably going to be Morton. Yeah, it's going to be Morton versus Lorenzen. Good God, Andrew. Way to go, dude. And then they haven't announced who's going to start the Sunday game against Sonny Gray yet, whether it'll be Darius Vines staying up or whether he'll be shuffled back down and they go bullpen or they bring somebody else up from the minors. So that's still TBD.
That's not Sonny Gray. You're playing the Rangers.
Oh yeah, we're playing the. Yeah, you're right. It's not Sonny Gray. Excuse. I'm so used to seeing
John
Gray. Yeah, it's John Gray.
Gray.
I'm so used to seeing Gray and assuming Sonny. I keep forgetting. Yeah, that's my bad. Yeah. All right. So for the Cubbies this week, Joe, your West Coast trip finally ends 3 at the Diamondbacks. Brown versus Kelly, Hendricks versus Henry, Wicks versus Fat. And then come home for 4 with the Marlins, Imananga versus Meyer, Assad versus Luzardo, TBD versus Puck, Hendricks versus Weathers. This should be a pretty good week for you. Even if the Diamondbacks get ahead of you, you should. I think 3 out of 4 or a sweep should be a reasonable expectation against the Marlins, given the start that they've had so far at 3-13, only slightly better than the Chicago White Sox.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think they'll be happy to head back to Wrigley later in the week. They're off to a 1-0 start right now against the Diamondbacks tonight with Merrill Kelly on the mound. Seen some bright spots with Ben Brown so far, other than his initial appearance, which was I think day 3 of the season. But so far he's looked pretty good. Kyle is Kyle. I think he'll figure some things out here this week. Wicks, the stuff is there. It's just he hasn't been able to go long enough because of weather or innings or just pitch count. He got into some sticky spots with walking some guys or a couple of errors, extended some innings for him. But I think he'll figure a lot of stuff out. You really feel like they have a chance to win at least 3 of the 4 against Miami, and not just because of Miami's start to the year, but Imanaga and Assad, they're 5-1 when those two are on the mound right now, and you really can't blame them for expecting that. I don't know who that TBD is yet. It could be Tyone. It could be somebody else. There could be an adjustment there. They haven't officially announced when Tyone's going to pitch. They just said he would be back with the club when they got to Arizona.
Okay.
So nothing official there. I do want to see what they do offensively this week with the Seiya drop down. I do expect Council to give Canario plenty of opportunity right away. I don't expect him to pull a Rossi and pull a guy up and bench him for 3 weeks. I expect that we'll find out pretty quickly, how well Canario transfers up here. And you really feel like Belly will figure some stuff out. He's a little bit further away than you'd like him to be. But we'll see if he can figure some things out. And Nico, we didn't talk about him earlier, but I think if Nico can just do what he does well instead of trying to lift more, like I think they have him trying to lift the ball more, and it's just not helping. I don't think.
Let him slap. Just let the guy slap.
Let people do what they're good at. Do it within reason. Obviously, have a plan and a strategy, but I think let people do what they're good at and let it happen.
Like, this isn't as extreme as Whitey Herzog telling Vince Coleman, if you hit it in the air, you owe me $20, and if you hit it on the ground, I owe you $20. Like, we're not there, but just let the guy swing free. And I'll say this, Joe, having just watched the Marlins, remember with Luzardo, he's basically forced into an ace role. He's really a 3 guy, and with all the injuries they've had to their starting staff, he has had to step up as their ace, and honestly hasn't done a bad job, all things considered. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a slip up. That might be where it happens, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Phillies this week have an incredibly winnable week. They're at home all week, 3 with the Rockies, 3 at the White Sox, Nola versus Quantrill tonight, Suarez versus Gomber, Sanchez versus Feltner. And then with the White Sox, Turnbull versus Crotchet, Wheeler versus Soroka, and Nola versus TBD. If the Phillies don't take 4 out of 6 this week, you might want to start getting a little worried. I'm not going to say panic, but these are 2 very easily beatable teams, and they need to beat them. This might be a good week for their slow offense to finally wake up a little bit because they won't be facing world-class pitching this week. Let's be real.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely your get right week if you're Philly, with the way things have gone so far. The Rockies have, I don't know what they did earlier tonight, but the Rockies going into today have given up a run in the first inning for 5 straight games. So coming into tonight's game, so they're clearly this is a team to rebound against. The only pitching matchup that I see being kind of funky is Crochet with the White Sox. He's been pitching really well. They haven't won, but he's been pitching pretty good. He's had some good stuff. So that could be a little bit of a funky outing pitching wise between Crochet and Turnbull. But this is one of those weeks where 4 out of 6 is the minimum, and anything less than that is concerning. I mean, if you're 500, you're a little less concerned. But if you have a poor performance this week at home with this schedule, yeah, it's time to get a little frustrated and make some lineup changes for sure.
The combined record of the Rockies and the White Sox this season, Joe, is 6-25 going into games tonight. You need to lay the hammer down on teams like that. We talk about it. You win a third, you lose a third, and it's that final third that determines whether you make the playoffs or not. This set of games is in that first third and that final third. They cannot afford to have a letdown this week, especially against such poor competition.
Absolutely.
Then our our other local team, the Orioles, 3 versus the Twins, Irvin versus Varland, Rodriguez versus Paddock, Wells versus Lopez. 3 at the Royals, Kremer versus Marsh, Burns versus Reagans, and Irvin versus Lugo. So this is going to be a sneaky tough week for the Orioles. As we mentioned earlier, Kansas City's been hot. Minnesota started at 6-8. And they're going to be down Carlos Correa for a while. So that's definitely not going to help their offensive production. But they are the defending AL Central title winners. And I don't think they're as bad as their 6-8 record. Now, they're not world beaters, but they're better than 6-8. And, this is going to be a good week for the Orioles to see. Yeah, they've had a little bit of adversity, especially how that Milwaukee series went. Can they take the momentum from that come from behind victory and translate it into a good series against a red-hot Royals team right now? Again, something weird I didn't think I'd say this year. Red-hot.
Yeah, I think that the Twins series is a get-right series for them. The Twins have not been playing well. I know it's the Central and all of that, but the Twins have not been playing their best baseball, and this is a chance for the Orioles to kind of get things back in order, and they're at home too, which is even better. I think the Royals series is going to be a really intriguing one. I think both. I think Lugo and Ragans have been pitching really well. I think the entire staff has been pitching well, if I remember correctly. They all have their team ERA is less than 3 for the last couple of weeks from a pitching standpoint with the Royals. So there's a lot to like about what they're doing. And that's going to be a really interesting series to see if they can kind of push through some of that.
Yep, I agree. All right, that's it for us. Joe, do you have anything else for tonight?
I don't know.
All right. So, guys, you can find audio recordings on Anchor, Spotify, Breaker, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, pretty much anywhere where you can find podcasts. We're live on YouTube, Facebook Live, as well as Twitter. Merchandise is at redbubble.com. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/DollarDogsAndBeer. The Twitter page is at DDAB_podcast. All 4 of us are on Twitter as well. I'm at PyroLord314. Jason's at JRicker300. Joe is at JoltandJoe35. And Ron is at DipnerRon. We are presented by Dark Arrow Podcast LLC and sponsored by Baron Barbershop over in Mannheim. Guys, may the dogs always cost $1 like they did in Philly tonight, and may the beer always be cold. Have a good one.